The commander spat. "They're useless," flicking through the reports. "A race that can't even defend their own planet. Let them burn," no one argued with him. The Mazar, a species barely capable of interstellar flight, had been under attack for weeks. The Zak Consortium, a coalition of brutal war-hungry species, swept through their territories like wildfire. Every species that had once pledged support to the Mazar pulled back the moment things got difficult. After all, why risk fleets on a race that couldn't even muster a decent defense? The Galactic Council had been briefed. Some argued for mercy, others for tactical retreats, but most agreed. The Mazar weren't worth the trouble, except for one species. "Have we heard anything from the humans?" the commander asked, tone dripping with disbelief. The council representative, a relax with too many eyes and not enough sense, sighed. "They're sending aid. Their fleet's already en route." The room went silent for a moment. The commander stared, genuinely baffled. "Aid to them? Why, they've got nothing to offer. They barely have functioning shields." The relax glanced at his tablet. "Apparently, they have an agreement with the Mazar." "An agreement?" the commander laughed, shaking his head. "No one honors agreements like that anymore." The relax shifted uncomfortably. "Apparently, the humans do." From the bridge of the Vanguard Captain Carlos stared at the planet below. It was a wasteland of smoke and fire, the Mazar cities flickering dimly in the distance, their defenses failing one after another. Even from space the planet looked like it was dying. "Sir," his first officer spoke up, "we're getting reports of Zur ground forces closing in on the capital city." "How many civilians left?" Carlo asked. "Too many. If we don't move quickly, they'll be wiped out." Carlo clenched his jaw, watching the tactical display. They were vastly outnumbered and the Zurich ships outgunned them 3-1. But that didn't matter. They hadn't come for an easy fight. "They're relying on us," Carlo muttered. "Prepare all strike teams. We're going in on the ground." The Mazar were barely holding on, their makeshift barricades crumbling under the pressure of the Zak onslaught. Their soldiers, brave but ill-equipped, fired what little they had at the advancing invaders. The Zak marched forward with brutal efficiency, mowing down the Mazar with ease. In the center of the chaos, Mazar leaders huddled together, helpless. And then, out of nowhere, the sky roared. Shuttles marked with the unmistakable insignia of Earth screamed overhead. Human drop pods followed, slamming into the ground with the force of meteors. The Zurich barely had time to react before the first humans were on them, armored, fast, and shockingly coordinated. The human soldiers hit the ground running, scattering the Zak with precise, brutal attacks. The Mazar could only stare in disbelief as the humans did what they had been unable to do for weeks. Captain Carlo hit the ground, his boots sinking into the ashen soil around him. His men were already moving, pushing the Zurich forces back with ease. The Mazar capital, a city of twisted metal and shattered streets, lay in ruins, but there was still time. If they could hold the line, they might save what was left. "Captain, Zurich reinforcements on the way," his comm officer reported. "Good," Carlo grunted. "I was starting to think this was going to be too easy." The Zurich were relentless, their hulking forms twice the size of most humans, barreling forward, their weapons spitting fire. But the humans didn't flinch. They moved as one, each soldier a cog in a well-oiled machine, cutting down the Zurich with brutal precision. The Mazar huddled behind their shattered barricades, watching in awe. They had expected death, defeat, the end of their species. Instead, they saw humans fighting with a tenacity that was as terrifying as it was impressive. One Mazar leader, trembling, approached Carlo, his alien eyes wide, his voice shaking. Why did you come?" Carlo glanced at him, reloading his rifle. "We had a deal." "A deal?" The Mazar leader seemed confused. "But no one else, we're not everyone else," Carlo said simply. He turned back to the battle, signaling his men to push forward. The Zak were relentless, but the humans were something else entirely. They didn't have the numbers, but they didn't need them. Every human soldier seemed to fight with a singular purpose, cutting through the enemy with a level of focus that unnerved even the Zak commanders. As the battle raged, Carlo's team pushed deeper into the city. The Zak fell back, but they weren't defeated yet. The humans could win the battle, but the war, that was a different question altogether. "Captain," his first officer said, "we've secured the western flank, but the Zak are regrouping." Carlo nodded, his eyes scanning the battlefield. "We need to hold this position. Reinforcements are still hours away." The Mazar leader, still lingering nearby, looked up at him. You can't hold them off alone." Carlo gave him a sharp look. "Watch us." The Mazar leader didn't know what to say. He had expected humans to be like the others, cold, calculating, unwilling to risk their own lives for a species as insignificant as the Mazar. Instead, he saw something different. He saw humans who didn't turn their backs when things got hard. Humans who fought even when there was no clear reward. For the first time in days, a sliver of hope sparked in his mind. The human advance was steady but grueling. Each street felt like a new battlefield, every corner hiding more Zack ready to ambush. Carlo's armor clanked with each step, dirt and ash mixing with the sweat on his brow, yet he kept going. His men followed without question. "Captain," his calm officer's voice buzzed in his ear, "the Zack are regrouping in the industrial sector. They're trying to cut off our escape." Carlo smirked. "Let them try. We're not going anywhere." He motioned for his squad to move forward, and they advanced through the ruins of the Mazar capital. Fires raged around them, and the distant sounds of explosions echoed through the broken city. But despite the chaos, the humans remained focused. They reached the industrial district, a mess of twisted metal and collapsed structures. The Zurich had entrenched themselves here. Their heavy artillery pointed toward the city's few remaining strongholds. If they weren't stopped, the capital would fall for sure. Carlo studied the layout. It was a death trap, no doubt, but they didn't have the luxury of waiting. "We'll hit them hard and fast. No time to second guess." Carlo's voice was firm, and his men nodded without hesitation. The first volley from the human side was like a thunderclap. Rockets screamed toward the Zack positions, detonating with brutal efficiency. Zack's soldiers scrambled to respond, but the humans were already on the move. They hit the entrenched enemy lines with an almost reckless speed, tearing through the Zack's defensive positions as if they were nothing. Carlo was in the thick of it, rifle barking in his hands as he cut down the towering Zack one after another. Around him, his men moved like ghosts, weaving through the enemy lines, creating chaos wherever they went. The Zack fought back hard, but it was clear they hadn't expected this kind of resistance. Their tactics were based on overwhelming their enemies with brute force, but the humans didn't play by those rules. They were faster, more adaptable, and far more stubborn than the Zack had anticipated. A blast went off nearby, shaking the ground beneath Carlo's feet. He stumbled, but quickly regained his balance, firing another round into the chest of a charging Zack. The alien collapsed with a guttural growl, its massive body hitting the ground with a heavy thud. "Captain," one of his men called out. "They're pulling back." Carlo didn't relax. He knew the Zack weren't retreating. They were regrouping, preparing for a counterattack. He glanced at the sky, where the smoke from the city's fires had darkened the horizon. They had made progress, but the battle was far from over. "We need to push forward," Carlo ordered. "We can't give them time to reorganize." The humans moved swiftly, pressing the advantage. But as they advanced deeper into the industrial sector, the resistance grew fiercer. Zack's soldiers began to flood the area, pouring out of hidden bunkers and underground tunnels. It was becoming clear that the Zurich had been preparing for a prolonged battle here, and they were throwing everything they had into it. Carlo's squad took cover behind a collapsed structure, as a hail of plasma fire rained down on them. The Zack were dug in deep now, and their heavy artillery was making it difficult to advance. "We're pinned," one of Carlo's men shouted, ducking as a nearby wall was blown apart. Carlo gritted his teeth. They couldn't afford to be bogged down here, not with the Zack so close to breaking through to the city's last defenses. "Rockets, now!" Carlo barked. The humans responded instantly, launching another volley of rockets into the Zack's fortified positions. The explosion shook the ground, sending debris flying in every direction. The Zack artillery fire lessened, but Carlo knew it wouldn't be enough to win the battle. "We're going in," he said, standing up from behind cover. His men looked at him, a mixture of exhaustion and determination in their eyes. They had come too far to turn back now. With a final nod, Carlo led the charge, his squad following close behind.